freshman or sophomore year, but is that really more the case when it comes to the phenom, that the coaches are looking that early?
Well, I would say that's true of Division I too. I think Stanford signed a softball player who is an 8th grader or something ridiculous like that, or at least said that's who they're taking.
You're talking as probably a standout athlete.
Yeah, but it's kind of hard to see at 8th grade a little bit of that, in my opinion, as a previous softball coach. But I would say in total, I think it's true kids are making commitments, verbal commitments in all 3 NCAA divisions much sooner. I mean, we've already got verbal commitments at Transient, and we don't offer athletic scholarships for kids who are sophomores in high school right now. So I would say that's true of both boys and girls in all 3 divisions. Now, NAIA may be a little bit different, but in NCAA Division III, the students are going to still have to be admitted to the school. So, you know, similar to the requirements you heard her talk about for Division I, you know, they got to get into Center and Transient to be able to play. NAIA, their academic requirements tend to be a little bit softer, and so they're able to get in. So somebody could, and it's happened, verbally commit to us when they're a junior, become a senior, and then not get in. Did it help? Well, and for Division III, there's no, and she mentioned it earlier, there's no clearinghouse or anything for Division III. You have to come in the door as a Division III, a regular student, so you have to meet the requirements of any student to get in the door. If you meet that, then you can play athletics.
Yes, back here, and we'll come up here.
How important is it for the student to, and social media, to hashtag every possible word associated with that sport? Is that a giant waste of time? Or, I guess maybe to the recruitment gentleman here, that might be a question for you. Is that a waste of time, or are coaches looking at just their videos?
So the question is, can they promote themselves via social media? Is that?
Yeah, you know, all these hashtags and, you know, this and that, is that even?
I'll tell you, I'll let Drew answer that, but I'll just give you, when we sign high school and college players, age 17 to 21-year-olds. Every June we have a draft, okay? All those players that we submit, write reports and submit for the draft, we have somebody in the office, an intern, somebody that's all they do for 4 months is they monitor social media accounts. And we have absolutely made high dollar decisions to walk away from a kid based on what either inappropriate tweet he made, so it certainly is an issue in that regard. Now,
as far as the hashtagging goes, I don't think that does very much. Coaches are so limited in their time that I don't think, for the most part, any of them are just getting on social media and searching whatever hashtag it is, trying to find players that way. I will say, to touch on what Mr. O'Neill is, social media is such a toxic thing when it comes to recruiting. Very little time do you hear stories about how social media was very influential in the way that a kid got to a school or not. And thankfully, me coming up through this school, LCA does a very good job of monitoring social media, whether kids like it or not. It's definitely for the better for all the students that they do it that way. For an example, I came in my freshman year at Center, and one of our team pictures that we took with a couple of the freshmen after our first freshman meeting, we were all dressed up, and one of the players on our team jokingly threw up a gang sign in one of his pictures. Next day, he has Danville police on campus meeting with our coach that they had somebody reported the picture, thinking one of our players who was involved in gang activity, which was couldn't be farther from the truth, but this kid thought it would have been funny, funny made the picture look cool or whatever. It's a very dangerous place for athletes to be messing around and playing. If there's any hesitancy in whether a kid should post something or not, err on the side of not posting it, because I promise they'll never be mad that they didn't put up something. But as far as social media going, you absolutely can promote yourself, but the best way by doing that is keeping as clean of a profile as you can, because I know from pretty much every coach that I've talked to, as soon as they get your name, for a lot of the recruiting, I had to put down my social media usernames and handles and all that, and that's the first thing they do is go in and bang that in and look through that and try to find anything to figure out what kind of kid you really are.
well, and I want to, if I could interject on that, we had an SEC coach on campus, and he
intimated to me that their admissions office has a group of people that all they do, they can't sign an NLI, a national letter of intent, with a kid unless they've passed through their social media filter in their admissions office. So it's becoming something that's more and more, and Heather, I don't know if it's something UK is going down this road yet. I'm sure the individual coaches are, but there was a young person, a young lady who lost a scholarship offer not at this school, but in Lexington at a high school, who lost a scholarship offer because of something she put on social media. We are trying, Kirby speaks to the female sports, I speak to the male sports before each season, and we haven't done it yet with the winter sports, but we go through about 10 or 15 minutes. I know doesn't sound like that, but we really try to pound home the social media can cost you not just athletic opportunities in college, but jobs, because it stays with you forever. These kids don't understand it, and I also think coaches in schools are getting better at understanding the whole masked account game, where I've got the account that I let mom and dad know that I have this handle, and then I've got the account that they don't know about, so to speak. And I think coaches are getting better at that, at discerning that. So for the purposes of this conversation, social media is big. I don't know, Holly, if there's anything you could add to that, obviously with no names, but you've probably seen this happen a ton in your experience.
I don't know what Heather would say, but if social media could go away today, I would be happy. I really would. I mean, the last 3 weeks, I think the trouble, even at Transylvania, and you just mentioned at Center, either deals with group me texts, which I don't ever want to hear those words again, but social media, I think people make decisions, and it only takes 1 second to push submit and there it goes. So I would really, everybody's shaking their heads up here because we're telling you it's a big deal what your students do on social media. It's very much monitored.
And I know that wasn't germane specifically to your question, but the whole topic of social media is becoming very toxic, and we just implore the kids to understand the ramifications of it. We had another question here. Yes?
I don't know if this is the right audience, but particularly Dr. Shealy, if you have an athlete that's interested in the smaller schools, probably not going to get an athletic scholarship, but currently plays year-round sports and plays travel sports, so literally all they are is a student and an athlete. When they're looking at schools like yours, one of the things that helps in that selective process is the resume, the leadership, the service, the other clubs, those pieces are where you can get money when you're at a school like, so I guess the question is, how does a student athlete that's in a high school situation determine how much of that resume they need to build? And how much do you see that affecting? For example, if you have a coach that says, I want this athlete, the athlete has the grades, they're going to get in, they're looking for money, but they don't have the resume because they've been a two-sport athlete and all they did was play ball. You following the...
Yeah, no, I am. For Division III, we can have no say in their financial aid package. So we won't be able to tell them anything about it. So that would be, for the state of Kentucky, just for sake of making sure we understand, that's Transylvania, Center, Spalding, and Berea, Thomas More. So it's going to be purely academic scholarships that they're going after. So it's going to be merit. And I think you mentioned about the ACT, SAT, and I also say this because I'm here. It's backed up this year that your FAFSA, if you're going to be in school for next year, the FAFSA came open October 1st. The implications of that, I think people are not quite getting, but what's going to actually happen is right now we are up in applications and admits about 4 times what we've ever been because we're admitting students much sooner, much faster. So we're already looking at juniors even as the overall university. But December 1st is like the drop-dead deadline if you're a senior right now. And I'm sure Center's on a similar timeline as the others. But I mention that to say this. I don't think it's going to hurt your daughter if she doesn't have a resume that has all this leadership and all those other things. I mean, if she's a good academic student, she's going to get academic awards. We're at Transy, we're test optional, so she could, in our sense, she could come only with a GPA and not submit a test score. But I will tell you this, the biggest thing that I see students doing, and I couldn't agree with her more, is they're not taking the ACT or SAT more times, or they're waiting. So we have students right now that aren't going to take it to they're seniors this year. They're not going to take the next test to December or after the first of the year. Well, we're already admitting, already giving out scholarships, so you're already missing those opportunities. So if you could encourage your sons or daughters to get that done, no matter what institution they're looking at, I think it'll be in their benefit. Your NAIA schools, they are able to look at the athletic, even if they give them academic, they're able to look at the athletic piece of it and use that for leadership. We can't use that as even for leadership in Division III.
Yes.
Terry,
I was just going to touch on that real quick. With LCA, it's kind of funny, Center and Transy both talk about how the schools are kind of in their own little bubbles. With LCA, kids are so around so many kids that are pushed to such a higher level through the school that they don't really realize how kind of ahead of the game the school already puts them. Being one of those kids that was constantly playing, traveling, and whether, there's a lot of kids that were doing all these community service options and doing all these other organizations to make their, their resume or whatever their application look stronger. LCA does such a fantastic job with, there's the community service requirements that you already have to do, which a lot of schools don't use, the Beta Club options, Mu Alpha Theta, all those kind of things that seem very normal and routine for students are far ahead of a lot of students coming out of different schools. So from LCA, from that standpoint, just by your kid being at this school, they're already going to be a little bit ahead of the game in the resume area of those kind of organizations. So I don't think that's a huge worry just because of the way that LCA pushes kids in that aspect.
Terry, my question was, when our students take the ACT multiple times, is there a better strategy or in terms of what schools you send your ACT scores to? Like our son sent them to some very top level Division I schools where you may not really have any realistic chance. Is it best not to send those ACT scores to schools where you may not really have a chance, or?
Yeah, I don't think it hurts to send your ACT score anywhere. What I find most frustrating is when you take the ACT, you do have 4 free places you can send them, and I see so many students send them nowhere. And then what you end up doing is you end up paying to send them at the end. If you're looking to be a Division I or Division II athlete, I would recommend sending it at least to the NCAA Eligibility Center. And the code for both tests, it's very hard, is 9999. So if nothing else, if you think you might be a Division I or Division II athlete and you don't have any other places you want to send those tests for free, send it to 9999. If you just want to kind of throw it out and send it to 3 other schools and you may or may not apply there, it's not going to hurt you. They're just going to be captured in the admission system of the school. It's not going to be penalized. I would, if you have it narrowed down to 2 or 3 choices, definitely send it to the choices you're looking at because it's going to save you. I think right now for ACT it costs $12.50 for each test to each place. And SAT, they will send all your tests, but once again, it's like $13 each place you send it. So it can be expensive if you have to send it at the end.
I have a quick question. Do we have one in the back? Yes. Go ahead. Yep.
Yeah, my daughter is already getting, and this might be for Drew, I don't know. She's already heard from 3 colleges that she's been accepted. Some have swim teams, some don't. So would you recommend at this point that when we visit them, could she contact the coaches and visit or talk with the coaches?
Absolutely. I took some unofficial visits to schools that for athletic programs where I was either there just on a general visit for the school, and I would email the coach before ahead of time and during my break time or whatever, I would go meet with him for lunch or something, or he would walk me around the facilities, because, which isn't normally a huge issue for kids. You are limited to a number of visits. I don't know exactly, five official visits, which typically a lot of kids don't use up all 5 of those, but it absolutely doesn't hurt. You know, if you're going to a school that your daughter's interested in, to email the coach ahead of time before you get there. You know, they might be out of town, they might be on campus, they might, you know, be very happy just to have you swing through their office or whatever. I don't think it ever hurts to go out to contact them before you get there, whether it's for a sporting reason or just for school.
When I talk with recruits too, I think the most important thing that when you come on campuses is that you are interviewing the school as much. This is going to be a place that you hopefully will spend 4 or 5 years. It needs to be somewhere where you feel comfortable with the coaches, where you feel comfortable with your future teammates. Every place is going to have a pool. Every place are going to have lane lines. There's going to be some things that are very common, but the people that make it up is the relationships you form during those recruiting visits are what's going to help you make a lot of the decisions. So that's what I tell is, you know, I think where I work is a great place, but it's not the right fit for everyone. Not everyone has the same ideals as I do. So it's really important to make sure that you have that fit, because this is your new family, your new marriage. So I look at it as recruiting both ends.
I had, we've got just a few more minutes because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, but I do think, Tim, I've got a question I'd like for you to address first and foremost. We briefly touched on it. Objective evaluation of your child's abilities, and how do you get that? How do you do that? I know you specifically work in the baseball world, but something that can kind of be taken across all sports. What are your suggestions?
Wow, that's difficult. I think whatever sport you're talking about, us parents, and I'm a parent, I have kids, I think my kids are better than they are, and I would guess that you do too, and that's totally normal and fair, but that becomes the hurdle, because he thinks he can play at University of Kentucky, and he's going to play as a freshman, and he's really good, and he's got a lot of confidence, and you certainly don't want to take that away from him and tell him that he can't. I would be careful telling any kid you can't, but you need to be realistic where your kid fits, what level. Just using him as an example, he was a very good high school player. He was very skilled. He had a lot of feel for the game. He had instincts. He didn't have great tools per se. When I say tools, I'm talking major league tools. But he had an excellent feel for the game. I'm going to tell you, maybe getting off track a little bit, the 2 things that this guy had that is going to determine whether your son or daughter plays in college. We could want it for him. We could push him in a certain direction. We could tell him what to do. We can tell him a lot of stuff. And it really doesn't matter. Because the 2 things that this guy has, what they have, is passion and desire for the sport. True passion, true desire. This kid had it when he was 6 years old. The difference in sports today versus 30 years ago, 40 years ago, when I was little, my parents used to tell me when to stop playing. Now our parents tell our kids, you got lessons tonight at 6, you got pitching lessons, we determine all of our kids' practice and work. This kid did it on his own. Truly, that is a separator. Now, back to his question, how do you evaluate realistically? You probably can't, because you didn't play at that level, at the higher levels. You really don't know, just like any parent. You have to rely on common sense. This guy was a heck of a high school player to do a lot of things. He's playing at Center College. Okay, if you are a good high school player, and I think this probably applies to any sport, you can play in college. Keith, would you agree with that? If you're a good high school player, you could play somewhere in college. And I think that's the message, that if there was 1,000 kids here you'd want to portray. The key is to get the kid to accept the fact that Center is awesome. Great experience. Most kids won't do that. It's D1 or bust, SEC or bust. big time or bust. Those kids, they didn't have passion and desire. So as parents, I think our number one job, especially in a failure sport that baseball is to encourage, stay positive, enhance passion and desire, and your kid has a chance. Specifically, I'll just tell you right now, Terry, beginning next year, we're gonna put on a camp, a showcase for baseball. I can't speak for other sports. There's no money involved. That we're gonna, in the fall, the Transies, the Asburys, the Moorheads, some D1s all the way down to the D3s, they're gonna come out and identify some kids. Hopefully, these kids you're talking about, your kids will have contacted these coaches, and we can kind of bring the two parties together. There's nothing greater for me than helping a kid out go to college.
I had a question along that line. It seems in various sports, there's all these showcase events. A lot of them appear to be more money makers for whoever's running the event than a true exposure or kind of, get some feel. How can you pick through those and, you're invited.
What sport? Baseball?
My daughter does tennis, but they do them in all sports. And,
Yeah, sure.
Come up here and we're inviting these kids. You pay, but they're inviting these kids, and there's going to be these 30 coaches there to see you. And
It's a little like roulette.
Yeah.
You're going to a showcase hoping somebody sees you. Okay, the chances of that happening, I'm not going to say it doesn't happen.
right.
He went to a lot of showcases. You probably got some bites from some schools, but it's pretty tough. Pretty tough.
I was going to say.
The showcase thing was definitely something that got under my skin from a lot of kids, because basically once you get into a sport and you use any kind of program for that sport, your name gets sent to a mass pool. And I always thought it was funny because I had teammates be like, yeah, I just got invited to this super prestigious camp. And, they'd send those things out like candy to kids. So I don't think they're necessarily a bad thing, but unless your son or daughter is doing something absolutely spectacular at this camp where it's going to make coaches stop what they're doing and turn and watch them do it, which for me, I wasn't that type of player, then I think those camps are not the right way to go. Now, if there's a school your daughter is interested in that's going to be at that camp, I think that's, if that's the best way to get in touch with them, let them know that you're going to be at that camp, you'd like them to watch you while you're at, I think that's okay. But just to blindly go to a camp that's just got an array of schools that, probably are a little out of competition or under competition, I think are personally a waste of time and money when they can be used to go to a lot more individualized camps of just that school or whatnot. Because I think, like I said, unless your son or daughter is just doing crazy things on the field or court, those things most of the time are just come in 12 hours, get my check, and leave.
The one thing that's kind of interesting in these camps, like if you go to your son's baseball player goes to the UK camp, the Transy coach is there, right? The Georgetown coach is there, Cincinnati maybe some Moorhead. They bring a lot of coaches in from other schools. I'm a big camp guy. I would say, a lady asked about recruiting colleges. I'm going to say 50, 60, 70% of the kids that sign to go to college contacted the college first.
Do you have anything to add to that?
Division III is going through some legislation about the showcases in particular at this year's convention. Currently, Division III is not allowed to do showcases. It has to be a camp that has instruction, and then there has to be then it could be a showcase. I think that's a huge confusion in the state of Kentucky because you have so many NAIs and they can do tryouts. You can come on their campus, you can do a tryout where you cannot do that at NCAA school. And you can't in Division III do the showcase at this point, not without it being in a camp setting. So that may change come January.
Other questions? Yes, sir.
Can you talk about the time commitment difference between Division I, II, III, and NAIA?
Great question. The question was talk about the time commitment difference between the different divisions. Is there a time commitment difference?
Obviously, I can't speak on Division I or Division II, but Division III is definitely just in that, if you call that the lower level, which I think all three are very comparable. I think in Division I you might have a lot more bigger travel just because of the playing bigger schools around. But from my personal experiences, it's absolutely a job, and I think that gets back to where Mr. O'Neill's talking about. If it's definitely got to be you're playing because you have a passion for that game, because it becomes a lot more. You have to be here at this time, 6 a.m. workouts. You're on a bus for 12 hours whatsoever. So it really does come back to having a passion for the game, and whether you are wanting to make those sacrifices, being whether you're forced to because you're playing on that team. But time commitment, I think it's different. Just I think college and high school was something I had to figure out because at LCA you're in school 7 hours, then 3 hours of practice, then you go home. With college, it's so much different where you have only 4 classes, 3 classes a day, whatever it is. And then sports can kind of fill in all those gaps all the way through the day. So, it can turn into all-day kind of things. I think in season is probably the biggest jump where it comes from time commitment, just because of, for me, I was realizing, for a high school game, I would show up an hour before the game, get ready to play, then go home. With college, it'd show up, 2.5 hours before the game, get to the dugout, and do whatever you have to do to prep the field, prep yourself, and then stay after, taking all that stuff down. So. Time commitment definitely goes up, and there's also the college classes side of it where academics are becoming more of a real thing. But I don't think it's anything that any kid can't handle, especially kids at LCA. They're so accelerated just from being at the school and how much the school demands for student athletes already. I think that LCA for me personally really prepared me in expectations for classroom with sports and just kind of the structure of that. So I think from that standpoint, kids from LCA are really kind of ahead of the curve going into playing college athletics.
Yeah, and I just to answer it kind of covered, as I've talked to a number of the kids who've left here and in different places, I wouldn't go into this thinking there's much difference in the time commitment. I think what you have to understand is, as I try to remind the kids and the families here, these coaches, this is their day job, most of these folks. So if they don't succeed, they lose their livelihood. So it's pretty important to them, whether it's D3, whether it's D2, D1. So that time commitment, I think you have to walk in with your eyes wide open that this is a time commitment. It is a job that you must love. We have, I'm proud to say, in the last few years, we've got, I counted them up, and so I'm probably missing a couple of people, but we have about 35 current LCA alums that over the last 3 years that are playing college athletics at some level of NCAA or NAIA. That number was much bigger, not much bigger, but it was bigger, of kids who initially signed to play a sport somewhere right out of high school. They're just no longer active. And it's not a negative on those kids. They just had to realize, gosh, an 8-hour bus trip to some town I've never heard of to play a couple of games or matches or whatever, and then an 8-hour bus ride where I'm getting proctored an exam by one of my assistant coaches, and we're stopping at the Flying J to take our showers and getting back, and by the way, the professor still thinks we should be in class at 8 o'clock on Monday morning. That's the reality. And I think what Tim and what all of them have said is very much a reality, that you've got to understand that. And most importantly, your young people have to understand that that's what it really is, whether you're playing at Rupp Arena, or whether you're playing at Center's baseball field, or whether you're playing Asbury, whatever. That's kind of the gig. And so saying you want to play in college is great. It's a great goal for many of the kids, but they do have to understand, and I think it's incumbent upon us as administrators, coaches, and people in the business to make sure families and kids know that. Because if Drew is somebody who's eat, breathe, drink, sleeps baseball and loves it, and so it's worked out for him. But there's great kids that it didn't work out for. They went and they said, you know what? We've had kids here, I'd like to use, I don't think he'd mind me calling him out. We had Nick Whitman, who was here. Nick was one of the better tailbacks we've had in football, one of the better athletes that we've had, and had opportunities to play at different levels. Had an opportunity to be preferred walk-on status in a couple of SEC schools. He simply chose to go to a school because it didn't mean, I don't know, you graduated with him, you graduated with him, right? Nick, he would rather have been a student than to go, as he kind of put it, being a tackling dummy and practices in the SEC, or go play the game of football. I think he made that that adult choice, and good for him. He decided he wanted to go to Clemson, and he's a student at Clemson, and as far as I know, doing great there. Had the options to play at a lot of different football schools, but just made that choice. So you don't, just because you can doesn't mean you have to. It's just, we need to be, as parents, open our kids' eyes to that.
Just to touch.
Sorry, I'm not on the panel, I just thought.
Nick's actually one of my best friends. Grew up with him and known him my whole life. And honestly, him just deciding to go to Clemson is probably one of the most respectable decisions I've ever had for him, because he knew, he had all these people telling him how good he was at football, but he knew in his heart that that wasn't his passion anymore. And he realized, which I think a lot of students that are looking into playing college athletics need to realize, that there's life after the 4 years of college. A lot of kids get sucked into, I'm a college athlete, I'm playing at this school, it looks great. When not a lot of people realize, where is this college or where is this institution going to put me after my 4 years here, after I'm done being called a college athlete. So I think that, in my opinion, for Nick was just an unbelievably mature decision for him to say, I want to just do what's best for me and for my next, years after getting out of college. And I think that's something a lot of kids need to really look into, because transferring is real. I've seen a lot of kids do it just because what they thought was the cool and good decision right out of high school didn't pan out for what they needed in their life. So I definitely think that's something to think about, where it's going to affect them after sports are done, because all of them are going to be done at some point or another.
Other questions? Well, I want to say how much I appreciate you all being here, and also these panelists, and let's give them a round of applause. If you have any questions about tonight or need some materials, just remember to email me. Just email tjohnson@lexca.org. We'll make it easy, and then I can filter it out to whomever or provide you the information myself. If you want to reach out to these individuals, I think they'd be okay with that I could share that information if you have those questions. With that, I appreciate it. Please let us know your feedback on this program and others, and what we could do more of to help you out in this process. Thanks a lot for being here. There you go.
We played Denison. They played close. Mom.
Basically,